How do you write amazing dialogue? Dialogue that will pop out at the reader and stab them in the eye. I'm joking, that was a metaphor. Here are 3 tips that will help you to write realistic and engaging but still entertaining dialogue. So if you're new here and you love stories and storytelling, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell and I'll keep you updated with future videos. So I believe that there are 2 broad categories in writing. The first one is things that are more rule-based and things that you can change and they will have a very definite effect and they will probably almost always improve your writing. These things include using less adverbs, cutting unnecessary words, filtering, using shorter sentences, or describing body language. These kind of things almost always make your writing better. They are rules that you can use in writing and they will almost always make it better. But there's a second category of things that are more vague and more subjective that could potentially make your writing better, but it's hard to know if it really actually does make it better. And these things include similes, metaphors, story structure, world building, the magic system, characters, and dialogue. These things are more vague because you don't know if you're doing them right or not, and you don't know if your ideas are actually good or not. This category is much more confusing because it relies on idea production, or commonly known as creativity. And creativity is subjective, right? Some people might like your ideas and some people might not. And so the question comes down to, how do I know that this line of dialogue that I just wrote will be engaging and believable for the majority of people that read it? That is the question that I'm going to answer today. The first hallmark of a great line of dialogue is one that serves multiple purposes. A rubbish line of dialogue is one that has absolutely no purpose. It has absolutely no reason why it should be there. It's like finding a carrot in a packet of crisps. It just shouldn't be there. You should just get rid of it. It would make your story better if it wasn't there, and it's just annoying. It's just annoying. But creating a line of dialogue with multiple purposes is a great way of making the writing more immersive because you're telling the reader a lot of information in very few words. And that is what writing is basically about. It is creating a sentence with as few words as possible, but creating the biggest emotional reaction. But here is a list of purposes that your dialogue could include. Firstly, and I believe the most effective use of dialogue, is to tell something about the character. One of the most iconic Marvel villains, Killmonger, says, "Just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships because they knew death was better than bondage." This single line of dialogue shows a powerful truth about Killmonger. He would sacrifice anything for what he believes is freedom, and he would rather die than not be free. That line is so powerful because it reveals what that character's nature is. It's similar to Braveheart's, "They can take our lives, but they will never take our freedom." Or another example in Lord of the Rings, Gollum's iconic "My precious." This reveals so much about his nature because it shows that he is so intoxicated by the ring and consumed by it that he could not possibly live without it. His mind is utterly consumed by the ring and its power. Or they can serve other purposes, for example, moving the plot forwards. Scenes where characters are discussing strategy or how they're going to attack their enemies. These scenes are basically conversations that people have about the best plan to use to move forwards and to achieve their goal. Or you can use dialogue to reveal secrets. Perhaps the most iconic line in movie history, when Darth Vader says to Luke, "No, I am your father." So this line of dialogue serves a huge purpose. Or dialogue can be used to create fear. For example, Voldemort's "I can touch you now." And so the second tip is to show, not tell. This is an ancient principle in writing, and you can also use it for dialogue. Bad dialogue is where you simply tell the reader directly what the character is thinking or feeling by the words that they use. The characters are literally saying exactly what they're feeling. For example, "I'm feeling angry," or "I'm tired," or "I'm scared." These kind of lines are boring because they don't really have much depth and the reader doesn't really have to work out much about what is going on. These lines lack depth because there's no hidden subtext. Subtext is basically the meaning that is expressed hidden beneath the words that they're using. So the subtext isn't expressed by the actual words that the character character's using, but it's expressed perhaps by the tone of voice that they're using, or the body language that they're using when they speak the words, or even the situation that they're in when they speak the words. Basically, subtext is the meaning that is expressed by all of the factors that are not the words themselves. Perfect example is in Amadeus, when Mozart is playing Salieri's piece to the emperor, and halfway through the piece he says,
"The rest is just the same, isn't it?"
And he says this in a kind of jovial, joking way, but there's nothing really jokey about it, because the words that he uses seem quite harmless, but the audience knows that it's a very passive-aggressive way of saying, I'm the better composer here, and Salieri, you should probably just back off because this is way beyond your territory, and you can't compose anywhere near as well as I can, so just stay away, just go away, basically. The third tip is to give all of the characters a unique voice and make it consistent throughout the story. The way that I believe that is the most effective to do this is to give all of your characters a detailed backstory where you talk about all of the things that led up to the way that they speak today. If you think about it, the way that you speak today is a result of all the experiences that you've had during your life up to this point. Your family, your friends, your experiences, everything that you've been through has caused you to speak how you speak today. This defines how introverted or extroverted or closed or open or positive or negative that you are. And if for every character you create a really detailed backstory, even if you don't use the backstory in your book, I think it helps a lot to know exactly why the character would be speaking how they're speaking, so that every time you write dialogue for that character, you can remind yourself what the character has been through in their past that's caused them to speak the way that they do, which will create a much more consistent writing voice. I think that the most important things to include in the backstory are family, friends, education, their job, their career, and their past experiences like traumas that they've had or really happy memories that they've had that are charged with emotion. It's like in Inside Out with all the core memories, and those are the things that have caused them to be what they are today. So here's a quick summary of the 3 points. The first one is to use dialogue that serves multiple purposes, because then you're able to convey so much information about the characters or about the plot or about secrets, which makes the writing more immersive. The second point is to use subtext, which is the hidden meaning behind the words that are used that isn't expressed in the actual words themselves, but in the tone of voice or the body language. The classic example of this is when someone says I'm fine, which usually never means I'm fine. It usually means that they're feeling quite depressed and negative and they actually need encouragement, and they're not feeling safe enough or confident enough to actually say how they're feeling. And the third tip is to develop unique character voices by developing a backstory for all the characters to make the voices more consistent throughout the story, because you'll know the reason why they're saying what they're saying. So if you found this video interesting or useful, give it a like and comment. What is your favorite line of dialogue ever? And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. See you then, amigos.